All right. Hi, guys. Welcome to another episode of Yobo Live. This is the 11th episode of Yobo Live. We've been doing this for over 3 months now. Really happy to be doing this session. Recently, we saw an ad which is very famous again because anything that Apple does is famous. The ad just released a couple of days ago where it's talking about privacy. It's talking about all these people coming on the screen and talking aloud, the kind of things that you would typically not say aloud, but you very happily type them into your Google search bar, you type them into your phone, and suddenly you realize that on Instagram or somewhere you get an ad related to that. So if you're saying to your friend that you really miss meeting him and you know that the friend is in Calcutta, then you will get this flight tickets ad from Make My Trip saying that, okay, flight tickets are really cheap right now. So what is that? This entire world that we've created online, a lot of people talk about aspects around it. At the one end, there are these people who are unwilling to share data, who are talking about privacy, who are talking about what data should be used, whether data should be used ethically, etc. At the other end, there is this entire world that most people talk about and they have no idea about, which is artificial intelligence and machine learning. Most of the people have no idea what these terms mean, but they are bandied about very freely to talk about data and data analytics. Uh, Making this story complete is these school campuses where data analytics up till recently wasn't even taught in a very formal kind of a way. It used to be part of larger courses. You would see a little bit of data analytics coming up in marketing, a little bit in finance, a fair bit in operations as well. But data analytics in itself is a field that has developed over the years as more and more data has become available. Right from Netflix and Spotify, the way they use data to get to know you and give you great recommendations to retail giants like Amazon and Target and Reliance and how they've been using data. So we're going to talk about this entire world of data analytics. It's one of those biggest upcoming fields. It's the future of work, and we're going to talk about how to get a great summer internship in data analytics. We are going to talk to three very interesting people that we have today. One of whom is actually a veteran of Yobo Live now. She's appeared on Yobo Live before as well. So I'm going to start with her. Shayantani, if you could please introduce yourself and tell us why you love data. Give me your
So,
introduction in a single line why you love data. Yeah, go on.
I love data because data never lies. So I did my MBA from MICA this year, and now I'm working as a site merchandiser in Target.
All right. Thanks, Shayantani. Welcome to Yobo Live again. Niloy, would you like to go next?
Sure. Thanks, Kunj. Hi, I'm Niloy. For me, yeah, data tells stories, and it's all about that. And I currently am working as a trust and safety strategist at Google, and I also interned there last summer.
All right. And on to the third Bengali of this panel. We've got an all Bengali guest panel today. So, Surjo, if you could please introduce yourself.
So hi guys, my name is Surjo. So I chose data because I prefer numbers over slides, and so I graduated from IIM Kozhikode this year, and I had interned with American Express last summer, and I got a PPO there. So I'm working as a risk analyst with Amex right now.
All right. So we've got someone who uses data for selling more goods to us. We've got someone who's using more data to get even more data from us. And we've got someone who uses data to get our money. Okay. So we are going to talk to all these guys about their journey into their dream companies, into their dream roles. Guys, to begin with, my first fundamental question is that uh, you mentioned this, Surjo, in a way that have you chosen data analytics because you were more interested in Excel rather than PowerPoint?
So I think, yeah, that is one of the parts of it. But then you get to know that it's not just about the numbers, and it's also about building a story around those numbers. And not many people will understand the data, right? It's about how you represent the data. So
Right.
that is an interest that I'm gradually building while I'm working here. And even that is I'm finding out that it's a tough art in itself to paint a picture around data rather than just numbers.
Right. Right. Okay. What about you guys, Shayantani, Niloy? What made you realize that data analytics could be a field that I would enjoy? Was it your love with numbers, or was it something else?
So I was like right after my engineering, I went to MuSigma where I was working as a data scientist. So that was like one of my first stint with data, and I was handling a lot of data and understanding search data, and then like handling so much data, and then understanding that all the these days all the businesses are moving towards insights based on data. So then when I moved to
Right.
MICA, they also had marketing analytics where they use the data and then they try to explain to us what are the different campaigns and what are the different promotions that different brands across the world run, which were validated by data. So yeah, so
Right.
I thought it's a good combination of what I had and what I want to do.
Sure. Okay. What about you, Niloy? What was your first brush with data, and how did you fall in love with it?
Yeah, it started since my undergraduate days at Jadavpur. So I was working in the NLP research lab there, and I at that point I had a lot of interesting projects related to sentiment analysis from restaurant review data, stuff like that. So it always because of that interest in that particular domain, I went on to join Samsung in the data science team. I worked there for a couple of years, and it was all about building recommendation systems for users, and that involved a lot of like extracting a lot of interesting insights from data. So it was a lovely field to work in. And like Shantini mentioned, after I joined IIM Kozhikode, it sort of managed to stitch different topics like marketing as well as finance to data, which actually opens a scope for a lot of MBA related point of views for data. So that was actually quite an interesting culmination.
Okay. Guys, who do you think, and I'm sure you asked this question to yourself as well, that one is that, okay, do I enjoy data analytics and the work that goes into it? But the other question is also that, am I good enough or am I a good fit for a role like a data analyst role, right? So, when you ask these questions, what were some of the criteria that you looked at to realize that, okay, these are some of the criteria that if I meet, I'm a good fit for a analyst role?
I think I would say the ability to handle a lot of data. Like you, you cannot get intimidated by data because, like you mentioned, the world is running on data and everybody is on mobile and so much data is getting recorded. You have access to all of it, but how do you use it? That being said, it doesn't mean that you need to inherently know how to handle data. You can always learn it over time. But yeah, not to be intimidated and like Suja mentioned, be comfortable with numbers and Excel. Yeah, I think that is the basis of it.
What is a lot of data? So, Shantani, give us a view of your day-to-day work. You are 4 months into your job at Target. What is the kind of volume of data that you would be handling on a day-to-day basis?
So, because I'm on the business side, I do not look at the raw data. I look at reports that have been built from raw data by the tech team, and the reports that I look at involve your search data. What has been the search volume? What has been the conversion like? The click-through rate, the demand. And other than that, we also look at how to improve your site experience. So we look at
Right.
curating product recommendations, like Niloy mentioned. How are those recommendations performing? Are our guests interacting with those recommendations? And in the end, we also look at average order value. What has been your average basket value like? How can we improve it? Are you a profitable customer? Are you not a profitable customer? Is there any way to push your purchase to a more profitable category? So yeah, there are a lot of raw data, but we look at more at a reporting level, which are built by tech teams. And yeah, even then, like it's a lot of data. Even when you're looking at search data, you have to understand that not everything is relevant because a report is just collating your data to a readable format.
Right.
But what you need to look at, what you are looking at, what is your objective, depends a lot on how you are taking in that data and that report.
Sure. Okay. Let's go back to the original question, and I want the response from the other two guys in the panel. What, what are some of the characteristics of a good data analyst, according to you?
So I would definitely say that the number one criteria would be interest, irrespective of whether a person is adept at, say, having like a very quantitative mindset, or having a degree for that matter, say in specific field like computer science or statistics or information technology. It also depends on whether a person is interested in working in this field. So a lot of people actually take up analyst roles after they say have a non-engineering degree. So even then, having a lot of having a lot of experience inside a particular company working in a particular domain gives you a lot of insights, and makes you question whether you actually want to work in this field and sort of further develop your skills.
Okay.
I think it's commonly believed that you either have to be an engineer or a statistician or something like that to
You
get
already
into.
started getting questions of that sort, that do I have to be an engineer, a data analyst? I can see on the webinar, on the YouTube channel, those questions have started coming in. So, Radhika, Nabar, your answer is going to be, your question is going to be answered much earlier than you would have thought. Go on, Surya.
So you don't need to be either of those. You can be from anything. I know a junior who's an architect and now working as an analyst. So you can be from any field and then get into analytics. But I think that one of the crucial parts of being successful or having an interest in this field is to be open to thinking with numbers and thinking, like not looking at numbers as just what it is and as a 4-digit or a 5-digit number, but then understanding what the number represents. So that is actually a crucial part that many people might miss. And now for understanding what a number represents, you don't really need to have a degree in statistics or math or anything.
Okay. So, Surjo, having said that, and I want to stay with you for a moment here. You're saying that numbers, understanding numbers is important. How do I develop an understanding for numbers? uh, One of you, I think Niloy, talked about how data tells stories also. So it means that from this really tangible numerical quantitative thing, we are moving it to a qualitative thing. When Sayantani also talked about how she has to make sense of data and how she has to make sense of all that reports that come to her. Essentially you are saying that इसमें से क्या story निकल रही है, what is the story that is emerging from this? For that, how can I train? Like if I am a candidate who's interested in data analysis, but my exposure has been limited, what are some of the general skills I can pick up? Do certifications help? What kind of certifications help? Can you throw some light on that?
I think the simplest way, if you want to understand numbers, is you could look at something like a daily object, like say the newspaper, and you can see a lot of numbers there. But then if you take the numbers at just face value, they give you one picture. But if you try and dig deep into what that number means, it might be a entirely different picture. So that is a simple way of, you don't need
Let's
to.
take an example. Sorry, Surjo, to interrupt, but let's take an
Yeah,
example.
yeah.
Okay, so for example, COVID numbers. Okay,
Okay.
uh, how they are reported. So say when they say that India has seen the highest increase ever before, 1 lakh people tested.
Hmm.
Okay, now that is the data that has come to you. Now, what are some of the stories that emerge from him? How would you look at that data? What is the follow-up data that you would ask for to help substantiate some of the stories that you want to talk about?
Yeah, so the one I'm sure everybody's been following all this a lot of nowadays, but the simplest thing would be, like how many tests were conducted, what is the population of the country, and this is a huge country, so which part of the country, out of 1 lakh, maybe 80,000 are coming from one part and 20,000 are coming from the rest. So you can just look into those. Those are readily available on the internet. You don't need to know machine learning coding or building algorithms for that. You can just look into stuff like that, and then you can paint a very much broader picture than just saying that we recorded 1 lakh cases today.
Right. Sure. Okay. What
I,
about
I, if I may add a point there, Kunj. So a very nice way of connecting is probably, like you mentioned, a lot of states have rise in COVID cases, but it's unequal. And if you have a chart which actually says the daily increases across states, it's very difficult to actually understand at first glance. A very good way would be to map it on the India map and actually color code the regions on basis of scaling the sort of increase. So that helps you sort of connecting fast.
right? Now you're trying to tell a story. You're saying that, okay, color the maps, make the data more readable, more understandable at first glance rather than just a sheet of numbers. Sure. Shantini, you want to add something here?
No, I think I agree with Niloy and Shurja both. Like you have the numbers also. It also even like with this row of a data which is just 10 or 20 rows, you can try to understand how that data will make more sense if you just probably convert it to some visualization, understanding when does a pie chart look better, when does a bar chart look better. It's like we didn't know it when we started. We
Right.
started handling data and we all got to know. It's just about if you're interested to make some story out of it and if you want to learn, that's all.
Sure. Guys, again, I want to go back to my question a little bit of one part of that question I still don't have a clear answer on, which is that what kind of certifications, what kind of picking up of general skills is going to help me further, cement my candidature for a data analyst role.
I think from a hard skill perspective, Excel is very important because a lot of time we'll be handling a lot of data, and manually dealing with that amount of data is very intimidating and it's frustrating also at times. So understanding how to handle that data on Excel, learning a little shortcuts and understanding like pivoting or visualization or power pivot, and yeah, or maybe also along with Excel some BI tools like Power BI or Tableau. Yeah, little technical, but yeah, it makes it very easy to understand the data better.
Right. Okay. What about Niloy and Shurjo? Would you guys want to add something here?
Yeah, I would, along with Excel, like Shantini mentioned, I would say probably SQL. It's a very good to have skill to actually be able to query databases using SQL. And you can actually build up your own stories from that. Like, it's not rocket science to actually go to the next level. The first part is the most difficult part, actually cleaning the data and actually building relevant tables or subsets of information from your bigger raw database. And as for certifications, I think apart from certifications, a good way of actually understanding how this field works would be to maybe to actually involve yourself in live projects. A lot of these opportunities come up in B schools, so it will be actually very interesting to actually work on someone end to end on a particular data analytics project.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point for B school students. But even let's say you're not a B school student, you're in engineering or you're working somewhere, you could still take part in a lot of these open source competitions and just build up your portfolio of doing something with the numbers, no matter how simple it is. If it's there on your CV that you actually done something, then it helps because it shows that you have an interest. Because no one's going to expect you to be an expert when you're joining for a summer internship. But if you just, the more important part there would be to show that you've been in this field and tried to develop yourself over the last few years.
Okay, guys, let's spend some time helping the audience come up with some of the proactive projects that they can do to better understand data analytics. Okay, so let's try and marry some fields that students are generally interested in with how they can use data analytics in that space or take up a project around that. So, say for example, sport is something that a lot of students are interested in and follow. So it could be either football or cricket, but knowing the audience, the forum that I have here, probably I should be talking about football. But so tell me, how would you guys say? I'm a fan of football. I'm a Manchester United fan. What kind of a proactive data analytics assignment I can take up and present something interesting, and then have something to talk about on LinkedIn, for example?
So I actually follow football a lot and a lot of into sport analytics also. So I've seen a lot of these interesting projects where there's this website called Kaggle where you can get these data sets on player performances and stuff like that. So I've seen very interesting radar charts where you compare two footballers and how their statistics map up. So that's a good way, and I'm sure teams also look into that, obviously in a much more detailed manner. But you
So, for
can
example,
just
can
pick.
I give a definitive answer to between Messi and Ronaldo, who's the greatest footballer right now, using some of these data sets? Or
So
who's
you
the
just
most footballer, for example?
So you just go online and pick up their stats from say the last 5 seasons, and you then compare what are the relevant statistics. For example, you can't say that Ronaldo is a better header than Messi, so he's the better player. You got to take those into account and then build up a story around who the better player is and what their worth is right now.
Sure. Okay, guys. So I get it what you're saying. If anybody has anything to add, please do. Otherwise, I'll move to the next part of my question. Niloy, Shantani, not football fans. All right,
Stay on
cool.
the football part.
Totally agree with what Shurja was saying. And apart from Kaggle, I think a lot of you can actually build a small data set for yourself. Actually, like if you are wanting to build a regression model to actually predict the number of goals someone scores, and you sort of take in attributes of say last few weeks, you get. So it's an actually interesting problem where you sort of also empathize with the data set. So it actually helps you also think about new attributes. So it's
Right.
an interesting project for yourself also.
All right, guys, I have a question for you, which is not part of what was shared with you guys, but I would want to know your honest suggestion about that. Which is the most beautiful use of data that you've seen? You are yourselves users of so many apps and products, etc. Some people love how Spotify just knows them so well, for example, right? So, give me an example of an app or a product that you've used or seen how they do marketing or see experienced anywhere where you were like, man, this is like data analytics का वैन गॉग का पेंटिंग है ये इतनी ब्यूटीफुली ये यूज किया है. When did you feel that way?
I think I felt it with Spotify. Apart from like the recommendations, like those, they are spot on. But apart from that, I also noticed that at the end of 2019, they curated an entire playlist specific to you, which had different headers like your top played songs or your top songs in this genre, and which are the artists that you listen to all over the world, and how many
Right.
languages did your taste span across. So I think that was a very simple use of data. It doesn't need rocket science. They have all the data of all the music that you're listening to, but collating it all and then presenting it to you, like you listen to 32 artists across the world, 50 languages across the last year. I think that was very, very interesting. It blew me away. Very simple use of data, but very extraordinary way to present it. And nobody did it because Apple also has that data. YouTube also has that data. No offense, Niloy, but nobody did it. But yeah, it's very. I was blown away by it.
Cool. What about you guys, Niloy, Shurjo?
I would say Twitter. Actually, not an app, but Twitter is definitely, I think, one of the best ways I think you can actually use data. So there was a lot of projects related to social media analytics, which we sort of did in college at Kozhikode, and we could see beautiful visualizations of what is happening on the social network from Twitter data, and it was
Give us an
absolutely
example.
mind.
Give us an example, Niloy.
Yeah, so suppose there's a lot of tools which you can use. Say, Node Excel is a particular tool which you can use to sort of visualize what is happening around the user and around the user sentiment of a particular company. Say, any particular company like say Amazon or Flipkart, whether people are sort of happy with the products which they have. So you can actually see the relationship between the user and the company, and they are sort of different nodes in the social media. So any interaction like a tweet from a user to Flipkart or a user to Amazon will get reflected, and there you can actually assign positive sentiment edges according to the text which is tweeted. So it's a very nice use of data.
So I just add, coincidentally, I was a part of the same course that Niloy was talking about. So I just add another interesting thing that we used to do with Twitter data. So let's say you're a company and you have a hashtag which you want to promote. So you can actually look at who the most influential users of that hashtag are. So that's a very interesting way where you can select, like if you want to pay an influencer to promote your products, you can actually just look at Twitter data, and I'm sure you can do that for other platforms as well. It's just we didn't work with that. So that's actually a fascinating use of how you can promote a product just by looking at tweets.
Right. Interesting. So, okay, let's get into your companies now. All the three of you work at marquee companies, and I would love to know how, to whatever extent possible, how you guys use data or what your role entails essentially. I'm sure a data analyst role at a Google means very different to what a data analyst does at Amex versus what someone does at Target. So, take me through what were your summer internships like at your respective companies around data analytics, and what are you guys handling right now?
So I am into the credit risk side of things. So my work would basically be to, yeah, so we are basically a lending company. So we give out credit cards. So it's how to minimize the risk that the company faces to the card members. So we don't want to give out cards to too many people who we know are not going to be able to pay back. So our work is basically to identify who our most profitable card members would be, and how much credit do we have to give them. So that is but there are obviously other roles as well. So obviously there's fraud is another important role where you need to identify whether a transaction or someone said, or maybe it's a fraudulent transaction or entire card is fraudulent. And there's also the marketing side of things where you need to know which people to target, and you think if I get this guy to use a Amex credit card, then he's going to give me a lot of profit in the next 5 years or so.
All right. Okay. What about the other two?
During my internship, I was actually working sort of as a program manager in the Maps team of Google. So the role there was interesting. So it involved a lot of technical work. So actually, we had to sort of render attributes like roads and say like on the Google Maps. So it involved a lot of computer vision related problems. So we could actually, so there's a lot of open research on these projects, and people can actually look at how are roads sort of built just from imagery data, which is from aerial imagery. So it's a very nice project, and you can sort of scale and build these products across the whole world. And there are different attributes for which you can sort of render this. It can be vegetation and it can be water bodies. So there are very different ways of sort of looking at this, very computationally effective ways of sort of building these problems. And for currently, I'm working in the cloud team of Google, and we are looking at ways of sort of restricting abuse in Google Cloud products. So there are a lot of vectors of abuse which are currently present, because cloud is such a like a high, fast-growing domain. Like even in a pandemic situation, the Google Cloud and all the other cloud providers also grew by greater than 20-30%. So there's a lot of ways which where bad actors can actually take advantage of cloud infrastructure. So we are sort of like phishing, malware, and so these are the ways we try to understand how we can actually mitigate this kind of abuses at scale.
All right. Shantani?
Yeah, so I interned with Epsilon. It's an ad agency, but they have their own proprietary data. So what they do is in that data, they segment customers in terms of their demographics, their household data, or their income data. And as per that segmentation, they craft strategies with brands. And in Target, my site merchandising role is mainly about how to craft the best site experience for anybody who's visiting the site. So basically, my objective is to make sure that you reach your product in the minimum number of clicks possible. And at the same time, I make sure that you are buying whatever you want to buy. Apart from that, I'm also recommending you more items so that your basket is more profitable for us, because especially in an online business, when everything is shipped to your home, not all the categories are profitable. So we work a lot with our page views data. What are people looking at? What are the items that people are looking at? What are the search terms? Especially because of COVID, we are seeing a lot of search volume spike for thermometer or sanitizers, like all these specific COVID specific terms. So how can we curate an experience for our guests for that? How can we make sure that our recommendations are right on point, our conversion data, our CTR? So overall, and then we have all specific season launches also, like Halloween or holiday. So how can we curate experience both from a search experience, browse experience, and recommendations? So overall, making sure that you are a profitable customer for us.
Okay. Guys, it's good to know what you guys are up to in these companies, but let's talk a little bit about how did you make it into these companies. So I know that the Google process is like very different from the rest of the companies. It runs its own process. It's a lone ranger kind of a process. So uh, and Target and Amex will have their own proclivities about how their processes are. So can you take us through the process? Take us through how did you go about making important decisions at different phases, different stages during the process, and also eventually in the interview, what was that one question that you think you really nailed? That one question that you gave a great answer to. I would love to know that as well.
Yeah, I can start off with this question. So, Google processes are generally sort of very structured. So initially, we had to give, and so I'm talking about the internship because it started from there, and we had to give an aptitude test followed by there was a shortlist which was released, and there were two rounds of interviews following that. So. Both the rounds were eliminatory, and finally they sort of selected the candidates on basis of that. So post internship, I had to go through a PPI process, which again involved two more rounds of interview. So when they finally onboard you, all of your sort of prior feedback is taken into account before you're sort of selected. So that is the process at Google. And nailing the question at interview, Google actually on basis of the interviews which I sort of experienced, I saw that none of the interviews involved too technical questions. What they wanted to know is your like way of thinking. Like nobody asks you what are the parameters you want to tune in decision tree. Like there's no question like that. What they want to ask is how you sort of think about a problem. Like what, if I may say an example, like a very generic problem can be what are the sort of abuses you might experience during shopping of a product, like the life cycle of a person who is shopping on say any e-commerce website. So very open-ended questions which sort of lead to a discussion.
Okay.
I can go next. I think
Yeah.
for Target, it was mainly we had a GD and then we had 3 rounds of interviews. So mostly those interviews were around my understanding of the role and my background experience in data. So just basic questions on marketing, nothing technical, like Niloy said, basic questions on marketing and how do I think, because I had a background in data, how do I think data can play an integral role in it? But that doesn't, I don't think that's just because I had a background in data. I don't think that was like an integral part of the question. And mainly it was on like marketing principles and digital marketing and how is the online experience different from a retail in-store experience.
Okay.
So Amex, so I'll talk about the summer placement process because that's what I
Right.
went through. So Amex has a case-based GD where they'll ask you something related to the credit card business, but it's not something very technical that you wouldn't know. It could be basic, like how would you market credit card to say a certain demographic they choose, and what would be the channels you want to use, and how would you approach the customer, stuff like that. And apart, and or maybe it could be like how do you, what are the things you'd look at to understand if transaction happening is might be a fraudulent transaction. So stuff like that they'll ask you to discuss, or maybe how do you use analytics to determine whether a person is a risky customer or not. Something very generic, but you need to know a little bit about how data and also credit cards to answer that. So after the GD case-based GD, they had 2 rounds of interviews. Again, nothing technical about the machine learning or stuff like that. So it was again mostly about it. So I had done a few projects on analytics, so it was revolving around that. But if you don't have any projects in analytics, it's fine. They just give you scenarios on how to apply analytics to improve the business, and they'll ask you about what, so maybe they'll ask you what is the last thing you read about how data is being used to solve a innovative problem. Like say how I was asked that how do you think data can be used to help in climate solve reducing the rate of climate change. So stuff like that where you need to they don't expect a very good answer, but you need to think correctly is what they'll be
What were
looking
some of
at.
the things you ended up talking about?
So I actually I remembered about the rule in Delhi about odd and even car
Yeah.
rule in Delhi. So I actually spoke about regulating the number of cars that you can allow into a city depending on by predicting how much the pollution will be on the next day. I know it sounds very wild now, but at that time that was all I could think of.
Okay, guys, let's get into a little bit further down the road. Now, currently, students are just on the verge of starting the summer placement processes. I would have said that campuses are extremely nervous and there's a lot of activity on the campuses, but the campuses don't exist. So the homes are very nervous. A lot of activities going on Zoom. So, uh, what are some of the things that students can do just before the summer placements if they want to get into a data analytics role for the summer placements? What are some of the things that they can do over the next couple of weeks to get ready for different data analytics companies?
I'd say one important thing would be to, if you're applying to a particular company for an analytics role in particular, so it's important to know how you think the company may be using analytics right now to improve. It may be to improve user experience or just profitability or something, but you need to have an idea of, why this particular company in say whatever retail or credit or anything is, why this company might benefit from a good analyst like you.
Okay, sure. You guys want to
Uh,
add something? Yeah, go on.
Yeah, one way of as adding to what Shurja said, it also helped to sort of make your preparation sort of aligning to industries where the company is actually placed in. So if you want to look at, you are aiming for analytics roles in an FMCG company, you can actually club your preparation together by looking at, say, different functions of analytics in an FMCG company. It can be on the supply chain side, it can be on the inventory prediction side, it can be on actually recommendation of products. So you can think about different functions which are present in a particular company and sort of read. There's a lot of resources on internet and a lot of blogs which just actually discuss these use cases. So it's a very good way to prepare yourself.
Okay, interesting. What about you, Shantani?
Yeah, yeah, I think I agree with Niloy and Shruti. Just understanding what your role is and how data plays an integral part of it, and also at the same time, for any organization, how are they using their data or any use cases in general, just to establish your point, and the fact that you understand the role. You need not understand the technicalities of it, but just that you understand what it encompasses and what you are expected to do.
Okay.
And
So when you're, yeah, sorry,
Yeah,
go ahead.
go on, go on.
yeah,
Surjo,
just to add up,
Niloy, go.
Yasuja, you can go.
Yeah, Niloy, go on.
So a lot of
We are in
currently
Bengal, guys. We are not in Lucknow. Why are we doing this? Yeah, please.
Yeah, so currently there's a lot of discussions on LinkedIn where people are saying that their already trained machine learning models are actually failing because there's a huge change in customer behavior right now because of the COVID situation. So
Right.
you also have to make sure that your models are actually like resilient to these kind of user changes, and actually this is a huge takeaway from this current pandemic.
Okay.
I was just saying that you don't, when you're looking at, say, use cases or anything on the internet regarding, say, why company X is doing Y, so you don't need to look into detailed research papers about, the math and the statistics behind that, because I know nobody's going to expect you to know all of that or ask you that. It's more important to have a business sense of, why the company is doing this and how it benefits the company.
All right. Okay, guys. There has been that question around is engineering important to get into a data analyst role? There is a way to flip this question and ask: is MBA after engineering also important for a data analyst job? It segues very nicely with what Surjo was saying, because Surjo was talking about business understanding, and that's something that I guess an MBA helps even an engineer with. But what is your opinion? If I am very clear as an engineer that being a data analyst is where I want to go, is an MBA really worth my time?
I think data analyst as a role is very technical. And so that's why you'd find mostly engineering grads or like non-engineering grads at a graduate level, people entering for data analyst roles. And post MBA, like for me, and I think that is true for most of the people, that you understand how to use that data from a business perspective. So, for example, in MuSigma, we had a client that we were working with. So, when you're working for a client, your visibility into the business and what you can do with the data is a little limited. So, maybe there you can think of doing an MBA and then probably understanding the business side of things and then getting into a role which deals with both data and business. But otherwise, I think, especially in startups where everything is done in house and you have visibility into the business, I'm not sure. An MBA may be a cherry on top, but depending on the organization, it may not be required.
Okay. What about you guys? What do you think, Niloy?
It all depends on whether your perspective has changed prior, like before you pursued an MBA and was working as only as an analyst, or after the MBA. So, say, just as to give an example, after you have an MBA and you're working as an analyst role in an organization, so you look at false positive rate as a metric when you're working as an analyst. So now you can sort of connect it if you have an MBA degree and look at it in a different lens. So suppose there's a website and they sort of have a captcha blocker. So people say X number of people are getting blocked by that website due to that captcha, and that's a entirely false positive which is happening. So amongst those X frustrated customers, say 20% of people actually fall out. So that's the attrition rate of because of that false positive. So you have 20% of X people falling out. So what does this result in? So if you assign a lifetime value of say V to each customer, so you actually lose a revenue line of say 20% of X multiplied by V. So it's a
Right.
way of sort of connecting to the top line of an organization or to the bottom line.
Okay.
So, I think analyst itself, the term is very widely used. I mean, it could refer to a very different kind of roles, and both would be analysts. So, like I'll say, like when we join as an MBA, so we get divided into different functions and different roles, but none of us are actually working on building, complex machine learning algorithms. So that is, even they're called analysts, and even we're called analysts, but those roles are best left for the engineers.
Okay, guys, I'm going to now take a few questions from the audiences that have been coming in. The first question is just a moment. Yeah, the first question is about data analyst versus data scientist. How are the two programs different? And also, what is the impact of business analytics programs in IIMs, if you've experienced that in any way?
Yeah, I can take a stab at that. Generally, it's a very strong intersection between these two fields, data analyst and data scientist. But usually, data scientists look at
Divide what a scientist does and what an analyst does, and how do they work together, and why one is important to the other.
exactly. So they sort of help each other, I would first say. And there's also, I would like to at the onset say that these roles which we are mentioning are very it's a very gray area, and it varying from organization to organization, there can be a lot of overlap. So usually, generally, data analysts usually work on SQL and look at the visualization part of data, and
Right.
they sort of look at the general aggregated queries and have a lot of descriptive analytics information extracted from it. Data scientists look at a more macro point of view, and they sort of find out the larger sort of question which is arising from the insights which they're generating, and they usually more on the machine learning side of things, not just pure descriptive analytics, but more of predictive and prescriptive.
Okay. Surjo, Shantani, do you guys have anything to add here?
I think analysts, like Shurja mentioned, there can also be a business analyst and there can also be a data analyst. So business analyst, sometimes it also infringes a little into data analyst jobs. But yeah, overall, data analyst, data scientist, business analyst, I think they're very closely connected roles, very close overlap.
Okay, guys, now I'm going to ask you to do a little bit of a pep talk for one of our guests, for one of our students. Deven 9007 is completely disillusioned with data science. It seems like all I am doing is tuning parameters in a pre-built Python library, training and testing ad nauseum. Seems like data engineer is more interesting. So he is disillusioned by data science and he feels like data engineering is more interesting. Uh, he's defined data science role in a particular way. What would you want to say to him?
I'm a
That's a
little
tough question. Yeah, go ahead, Chanti.
Let's talk about the bits that you don't enjoy about data science and the bits that you do enjoy about data science. Let's talk about that, because at the end of the day, everything is Pareto, right? Everything is 80-20. You're doing 80% of the stuff that you don't like so that you can do the 20% of stuff that you like. So let's talk about what are the stuff that each of you likes and dislikes about working with data.
I
As
think
you yeah, Shantini, go ahead.
I think sometimes what happens is when I have a lot of data, I want to like deep dive into something because I am hoping to find something like staggering or something really exceptional. But in the end, I do so much of deep diving. I build like graphs out of it, and
अब कोई
I
story नहीं आ
look
रहा है
at
बाहर.
reports, and nothing comes in the end. And it's like as clear as water. I think that sometimes is very frustrating to me.
Sure. Okay.
Uh, I think that's a good point because you start with a hypothesis that if I do this, I might lead here. And then you work for maybe 2 weeks on that. And then you think, oh my God, this is completely wrong. I can't, I can't show my manager this data. I have to start again.
Yeah, exactly. And especially because the data is huge, it's not a small amount of
Yeah,
data that you can
exactly.
redo it. takes time. Yeah.
Yeah. And
What about you?
like, yeah, so a lot of, as you mentioned, Pareto, like 80% of the work in, I think, even in data science involves first cleaning of the data. And you're imputing data values for the missing values, and that's a hell lot of work. And it's very difficult. And after that comes the modeling part. And it's actually a lot of most people, what people do is import a scikit-learn library and sort of use any classifier. But
Okay.
the real, like, sort of the thankless job is actually the data cleaning, data wrangling part.
Okay, but is the 80% of shit worth the 20% payoff that you get? Like, usually that's why people stay on a job. If the 80% nonsense that they have to do, or the just brute force kind of work that you have to do is worth it, because at the end of the day you get the other 20%. So in your opinion, for the three of you, is it worth it?
I think it's worth it. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
I think personally, when after the effort the hypothesis actually comes out to be true, it's
Yeah.
quite it is
Yeah.
worth it.
Yeah, it is definitely worth it.
Quite a high, right? Like being able to say that, okay, I thought of this hypothesis and now
Yes, now the data backs me. Thank you, data.
I Okay, I'm going to move forward. So Mayur Kriplani is asking how many projects slash years of experience as industrial software developer would you recommend to transition towards data analyst to actually land industry positions after doing online courses? So he's saying that online courses come with their own baggage. They don't necessarily always have that kind of recall as a IIM Kozhikode or a MICA MBA. So he's done online courses to sort out the skill side of things, but how much experience as an industrial software developer will help him get a data analyst role? Difficult.
Yeah, because I joined as a fresher. Like I did my engineering, then did my MBA, and then joined Amex as an analyst straight away. And I think Niloy had worked before, so I don't think there's just one straight answer. I'm sure Niloy and Shantani would be able to add to that.
Oh, like I think yeah, because like I was working in MuSigma and handling a lot of data, so I guess it fit somewhere like organically, but I'm not sure if there is anything extra that you need to do. If somebody has done online courses and is sure like of some of the hard skills, then probably some like hands-on experience with
Right.
some company might help. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, so like Shurja got into Amex as a fresher, and some companies want people with a bit of work ex in like, so they have sometimes it has a cutoff of work ex, like whether you've actually worked in an analytics analyst role in an organization. But then again, if you're a fresher, then you can also, as Shurja had, do a lot of projects which are related to analytic topics. So that can also be shown as a clear interest towards that area.
Sure.
But
Okay.
but
Niloy,
huh,
yeah, go on, go on. Yeah.
but huh, like even in B school, you can actually, as I mentioned before, you can do live projects which are related to analytics, and that can also build up.
Okay. Niloy, the next question is specifically to you, and this comes from Rajalakshmi. She's asking, I would like to ask Niloy, what are the specific skills that one requires to crack a trust and safety job interview at, I'm sure, at Google?
Yeah. So what helped for me is actually so Google has 9 products with more than 1 billion users. So there's a lot of scope of abuse happening in any of them. So what I was doing is I was reading upon the product, like a lot of news articles which are present online, which actually mention the type of abuses happening in each of them. Phishing happening in Google Drive, or say spam emails coming in large numbers during COVID in Gmail, or say listing of fake products during COVID, fake medicines on shopping websites. So it's very important to build an overview of what is happening, like in trust and safety of making sure the user actually has is not fraud, doesn't actually get exposed to fraud. And also a very important field which is sort of currently breeding out of trust and safety is differential privacy. So there's a lot of, as there is a talk of lot of data getting leaked, and people are where there's a lot of sensitive data getting shared nowadays. So what companies are doing is they sort of add some amount of noise to the data, but at the same time they make sure that an attacker can't extract information from it. That noise is sort of normally distributed, so that that true data is sort of slightly obfuscated, so it helps in actually hiding the data, true data.
Okay, sure. Samir, the next, sorry, so the next question comes from Samir Chaudhary. It's an interesting question. I want to ask ask you guys. How do you see AI messing the management jobs and the new things that should be included in MBA course to counter that? So, there is this thing that, some people think that the data analyst job is actually just a transitional job till the time AI really trains itself and gets good enough to handle these things on its own anyway. So, where do you fall in that thought process, and what do you guys think beyond that? What do you guys think needs to be incorporated in the MBA curriculum to make help better data scientists, analysts come out of B schools?
I think from a site merchandising perspective, like you can always, like Niloy mentioned, some of the things you can always automate and use ML, like data cleaning and data
Right.
modeling. Data modeling, you're already having packages, you just import them and you run it in R. But I think especially when it comes to um, converting those insights into business actions and strategizing what to do with that data, I'm not sure if that is something that you can completely delegate to machines through AI. That is my opinion.
Okay.
Plus, I think from what I've seen in the company, if something like COVID strikes and you don't have historical data for your algorithm to train, you'd probably need a few analysts to, do something manually.
Right. Okay. What about the second part of the question? How can we change the B school curriculum to better put out interesting data analysts out there? Or do you think the B school curriculum is great as is and does not need to be touched?
No, sir. I think it has to incorporate a lot of these courses, and which I think are, at least for IIM Kozhikode, they're doing it gradually. So we had, I think, 3 courses on this, which were available, so we could have taken those. But I think they're gradually expanding a few compulsory subjects into the first year as well on AI for business in particular.
Yeah.
So
Same
yeah.
for, yeah. Sorry. Same for MICA. We have like marketing analytics where we are taught different kind of AI and machine learning based subjects to how do you integrate the data and run codes on R and then converting it to like strategies and insights. And other than that, like Shubjo and Niloy mentioned, there's a lot of live projects that come into all these campuses. So probably bringing in more of those live projects so that students not only see the theory in classes but also understand the practical use of it. Yeah.
Anthony, how many people at MICA? Is it an elective, firstly?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So
Yeah, it's
how
a second year elective.
non-engineers in MICA end up taking up the marketing analytics elective is what I want to know.
I can give you my year stats. In my year, in a batch of 180, we had around 30 to 40 taking marketing analytics. And I think around 25% of them were engineers.
25%, is it? So
Yeah.
rest of them were from humanities and commerce kind of fields.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Did they face a challenge in the classroom when it came to making sense of these softwares and handling so much data?
Yeah, a little on the coding
Any-
side.
Okay.
But yeah, other than that, I think more than coding, it's the main emphasis is on how do you like structure that data and how do you read that data to make something meaningful out of it. So yeah, they were a little like it was a little more hectic compared to other like advertising and brand management courses or media courses in MICA.
Right.
But yeah, it like in the end, I think all of us came out with something that we could apply it in our practical life.
Okay. What about you guys? How has your experience been in the IIM Kozhikode classroom around analytics courses? Because I'm sure there were a larger number of analytics courses in a general management course like yours. And how did you see your peers who may be non-engineers deal with those courses?
Yeah, as Shurja was mentioning, we had quite a number of courses. Especially, there was one course where we had case studies with data sets in every in every case. So we
Right.
had to build models and actually read the case and link it with the data, and whether it's then and actually prescribe that what may be the next steps to take. So and we had to make presentations from them. So the data was only for extracting the insights, And that led to a quite of nice fruitful discussions in class, and we could actually look at how different people from different fields also look at it. So when you have a lot of different eyes looking at the same data, you get a lot of interesting like discussions.
Okay, sure. Okay, I'm going to move forward to the next question, which is by Prantik Mazumdar. Uh, how much statistics is needed for a business analyst now, as we have many tools to perform those statistical bits?
I think you have to
For,
know, like, for the data, when you, like, you do not have to know how to run those models, but probably for the data, for a case that you have, which model will probably work best. I think that is a knowledge that you should have. It, because in the end, even when you are importing a package in R, there are a lot of packages and models available, but which one to import, which one applies to the data set that you have. I think that kind of a knowledge is a little like it will be nice to have that
Right,
knowledge.
right. Okay. Niloy, Shurjo, you guys want to add something here?
I guess like I personally haven't worked with that much of statistics yet, but it's been just 4 months for me. So for me, I think the most statistics I've used is probability. That's it.
Okay.
So it may be depending on the role as such, what you're getting into, and also on the company.
Yeah, it adding to their points, I think yeah, it's important to know like what are the attributes or parameters you can tune in a particular model. Like that amount of know-how should be relevant. And say in an regression model, people should know about what an interaction variable actually means. Like these sort of things, it actually helps you like enhance the current levels of accuracy for your existing models.
Right. Okay, guys, I want to ask you one question, and I'm sure you explored this when you were also picking your careers. Uh, the thing is that sometimes people specialize in an industry. So I'm an FMCG guy, so I'm going to be in FMCG throughout my life. I'll do a variety of sales, marketing, even sometimes operations roles within FMCG. Okay, and then there is a functional specialization, which is something that you guys seem to be working towards, which is, say, you are data analysts, and that is your specialization. So, but how is your mobility between industries when as a analyst you go out into the market? So for example, if Shurjo has a very specific bit in finance analytics that he's handling right now, Shurjo, how do you think your mobility will be, say, across industries? Say if you want to get into Google or into Target, what would your mobility level be?
So I think it doesn't really matter what industry you're in, because ultimately you're just looking at, obviously it takes a little bit of time to build the business sense if you're moving from a very, to a very different industry. Like if I go into retail, it will be an entirely different business for me. But from an analyst perspective, it's actually kind of the similar work. So as long as you're comfortable with the numbers and building the stories around it, that remains the same no matter which industry you're moving to. So I think if you're an analyst, you don't have to worry that if you get into say Amex, you're going to stay in Amex and Visa or Mastercard all your life. So you can move into Google or Target anytime you want to.
Sure. Okay. What about you guys? What do you guys feel about your current work, and do you feel that there is easy mobility into other industries for you guys?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with what Shurjo said, and the skills definitely which we are developing are industry agnostic, and you can sort of like even and even if you just read the news every day, there's a lot of news coming on data analytics applications in different industries, and you can sort of like relate to what they're doing and why they're doing. So you can even in interviews, these discussions sort of lead to like scoping of, and the problems statements which are given in the interviews when you're trying to change your company, they're very open ended, and they mostly talk about the attributes which you look at. So it's mostly about being observant and sort of being aware of what kind of changes are happening in that particular industry.
Okay, guys, I'm going to ask a last question, and then we are going to close this webinar. Uh, okay, actually, Saeed Preetham is also asking the same question. How tough is it for a student from commerce background to learn the methods holistically and bring justice to the job? So I think you've sort of covered this. However, if you guys want to add something, please go ahead. All right.
I think
Yeah, go on, go on, go on.
Yeah, I was just saying that you can just look into something like there's applications of analytics in some field that you're interested in, even if you're in commerce, right? or it might be something completely tangential, like say, for example, sport or retail. You don't
Right.
technically have to be an engineer to be interested in sport, right? So you can always take a look into how you can use data to improve a certain problem statement in sport.
All right. Okay, guys, before we go, I just want to mention that, the GDPI season is upon us. We are very soon going to be starting summer placements, and, there are going to be a host of GDs and PIs you guys are going to be a part of. This year, it gets even further complicated because you're going to be doing it from home. The GDs are going to look like Zoom calls. And less like fish markets, as most recruiters usually complain. So it's going to be a tough time, and at Inside IIM, we've been cognizant of the fact that a lot of students have been reaching out to us saying that, okay, can you help us with GDPI prep, etc. So regarding that, within our council brand, we are launching a series of GDPI prep products as well. Do check them out. We'll share the link in the chat as well. Uh, you will get training from people who are absolute experts and themselves have gone through the journey that you're going through right now. People who made it to top companies in India after going through some of the toughest GDPI processes, and made it to their dream companies. So you can get trained by them one on one. So please check those out. In the link will be in the chat. With that, I'm going to close this session. Thanks, guys, for being here. Some of the things that you guys said were very interesting, and I had no idea about them myself. So I'm sure the students learned a lot from what you guys had to say. Also, kudos on doing some very interesting work in at the very cutting edge in a lot of top companies. You know, there are jobs of the past that are still, hobbling along. There are still people who are being hired and they are doing those kinds of jobs. And then there are jobs of the future that are just only now warming up. And data analytics is one of those areas which is only warming up now as more and more interesting products develop and more data is captured. There will be more and more things for you guys to do to capture things and then tell a story. So thank you so much for being here. I think this was a very valuable and interesting session. I'm sure the students gained a lot. Yes.
Thank
Bye,
you.
guys.
Bye bye.
Thanks,
Right.
Punch. Bye bye.
Thanks. Bye.